Nothing smells better than the smell of fresh bread, of pineapple buns, of steamed cakes. Yes, this is Hong Kong's newest bakery, Venner's on Hollywood Road. But imagine this, 150 years ago, a simple loaf of bread nearly sparked a city-wide panic and almost wiped out the entire European population of Hong Kong. Welcome to Hong Kong Murder and Mysteries. Murder and mysteries, not murder mysteries. So sometimes it might be a murder mystery, but mostly murder and mysteries. January 15th, 1857. Hong Kong was far from a peaceful city. This young British governed territory stood at the crossroads of conflict during the Second Opium War, a brutal clash triggered by imperial ambitions that brought devastation to both China and the foreign settlers. The European residents, numbering only a few thousand, lived mostly in areas separated from tens of thousands of Chinese workers who built and served the British colonial-style government. Suspicion and racial prejudice were everyday realities, deepened by laws designed to control and segregate the local population. In this climate, fear and mistrust soon outweighed reason. So the Esing Bakery stood about here on Queen's Road Central and was run by a man called Chung Alum. Now, he was a successful Chinese businessman who had risen through the ranks to provide bread to hundreds of families, including the British military and colonial officials here. But on that January morning, the bread became something far more sinister. Within hours of eating bread from Esing Bakery, between 300 to 500 residents, mostly Europeans but also some Chinese and Indian workers, fell violently ill. Symptoms ranged from vomiting and nausea to agonizing stomach cramps and paralysis. Doctors soon discovered the cause. The bread was tainted with a large dose of white arsenic, a poison so potent that it could have wiped out the whole of Hong Kong's European population. Miraculously, the arsenic induced immediate vomiting, saving many lives. Still, hundreds were sickened and there were 3 deaths, including that of Governor Boring's wife the following year, which were all later linked to the poisoning's effects. The victims were all brought to the Seamen's Hospital, Hong Kong's first Western medical facility, originally built for British naval personnel but already treating civilians by the 1850s. Luckily, at Victoria Barracks, hundreds of British and Indian soldiers escaped poisoning as their bread had been delivered late that morning, causing them to eat the bread from the day before. However, 9 years before, there was a poisoning at the barracks. In 1848, there was a tense incident when 25 soldiers suddenly became ill after supper. Suspicion quickly fell on 3 Chinese cooks who were arrested and charged with poisoning the food. However, as the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that the cooks had not added poison but a strong herbal emetic, a substance that induces vomiting. The cooks had been upset because their dinner time had been changed to a later hour, forcing them to work longer in the hot summer evenings. Their act was a protest against the harsh working conditions rather than the attempt to harm anyone. Thankfully, all of the soldiers recovered and the cooks, well, they were acquitted. Incidentally, just around the corner from the bakery is this. It's the Duddle Street lamps, built in the 1870s. Very famous, still around here in Hong Kong. It was the Duddle family who bought the bakery off Esing, and the Duddle family went on to become very wealthy businessmen here in Hong Kong. Here's a rare photo from the 1860s of the Wan Chai steam bakery, which would have been located just along the road. In the wake of the poisonings, panic erupted. The European community was quick to assume the worst. This was no accident, but a calculated attempt to exterminate them, a desperate act of war by the Chinese, or a treacherous campaign to terrorize the colonists. Relations between China and Britain were at boiling point. Chinese officials were believed to be placing bounties on European heads, and attacks on European homes were increasing. Fear morphed into anger, and suspicion fell on Chung Alum, the bakery's Chinese owner. Chung Alum had left Hong Kong on a steamer and headed west towards Macau just hours before the poisonings had begun. Within 24 hours, Chung Alum was dragged back from Macau, brought to Hong Kong, and charged with murder. He was probably brought to the Victoria Jail here, right in downtown Central. European citizens demanded swift justice, a drumhead court-martial or worse. Governor Bowring, however, insisted on a formal jury trial, even as the system was glaringly biased. Only European men served on juries, and legal procedures favoured the Europeans also. Chung's defence was that he was the victim of circumstance, loyal to neither side, caught in the crossfire of imperialism. He had openly defied Chinese officials by supplying bread to the British despite threats. Witnesses testified inconsistently. Some said sabotage by rival bakers, others that mistakes had occurred. Scientific evidence was rudimentary and inconclusive. The trial ended with an acquittal, but Chung was nevertheless exiled, his business destroyed. No one else faced charges. It was a hollow victory for justice, overshadowed by prejudice and colonial fear. Now, here's a little side note. Where is the most secure place in any prison? Just like the old Victoria Jail here. Is it B Hall, where Ho Chi Minh was kept in the early 20th century? No, it's right around the corner though. It is indeed the ladder store. The last thing that you would want prisoners getting hold of is ladders. So this is the most secure place in Victoria Jail. Not all voices back in Britain supported the colonial narrative of this incident. Radicals and anti-colonial parliamentarians in the House of Commons, like Thomas Perronnette Thompson, viewed the entire incident as a fabrication, a pretext for escalating the war against China and tightening control over Hong Kong's Chinese population. Thompson, a fierce critic of imperialist policies, argued that the poisoning allegation was exaggerated or invented to justify military aggression and colonial repression. He warned that such campaigns of fear only deepened the divide and injustice faced by the Chinese, whose lives were already circumscribed by oppressive laws and racial discrimination. Now it's time to have your say. What do you think after hearing the evidence? Was it A. Chung Alum acting alone, B. Bakery workers poisoning the bread, C. A total accident, D. A fabrication by the British to go to war, or E. Possibly sabotage by a business rival? Write it in the comments below, and whilst you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe. The Esing Bakery incident wasn't the only mass poisoning around this time. In 1858, the bustling town of Bradford in England fell victim to one of history's deadliest sweet treats. A fatal mix-up occurred when a pharmacy mistakenly supplied arsenic trioxide instead of a harmless white powder called DAF, which was used in the sweet-making process. Unknown to all, this deadly poison was mixed into the sweets. Around 200 people consumed the tainted candies, with around 20 deaths, many of them sadly children. Fast forward to 1900, a mysterious illness gripped northern England, especially around Manchester and Salford, leaving thousands seriously ill and around 70 dead. The symptoms, muscle weakness, numbness, and strange skin discolorations, confounded doctors who initially blamed the victims' heavy beer drinking. The breakthrough came when local beer was tested and found to contain arsenic. The contamination source was impure sugar tainted during the brewing process by sulfuric acid. And finally, back in the 1850s was the swill milk poisoning scandal, a major health crisis primarily in New York City, where cows were fed distillery waste called swill. The milk from these sickly cows was contaminated and adulterated with substances like chalk and flour to mask its poor quality. This tainted milk caused widespread illness and was responsible for the deaths of an estimated 8,000 infants annually due to diarrhea and other complications. The scandal was finally exposed in 1858 through powerful newspaper investigations, which led to public outrage and the eventual introduction of milk safety regulations.
Today, the Esing Bakery poisoning stands as a stark reminder of how colonial fear, racism, and political agendas could turn even ordinary events into tragedies of suspicion and punishment. This event wasn't just about poisoned bread, it was about a society fractured by race, power, and conflict. The British colonial authorities seized on the incident to justify harsher controls over Hong Kong's Chinese, institutionalizing mistrust and inequality for generations. Whether the poisonings were a result of a deliberate attack, a tragic accident, commercial sabotage, or a misinterpretation of events may never be fully determined. However, the challenges of uncovering the truth were compounded by the deep suspicions, cultural misunderstandings, and tensions that characterized the time. Thanks for joining me today on our first murder and mystery here in Hong Kong. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell me what you think of the video in the comments below. But for now, it's goodbye from me.
Dad, not the bread.